Good evening, folks, and welcome to the live stream. Apologies for the late arrival. Had some offline issues that needed to be sorted out, but I'm here finally. So I hope you had a wonderful week and you're ready for some crazy stuff over the weekend. Want to say hello to everyone who's popped on. Once again, apologies for the late arrival of yours truly, but we're here. Okay, so what we're going to talk about, of course, what happened in Manchester. The terrible attack. Zach Polanski, he's leading the Labour Party. Okay, I'm off to a good start. The Green Party conference. What's happening with the economy? Tory corruption and Michelle Mone, or maybe we could put all that together. But I want to start off, of course, with the main story, which is, of course, what happened in Manchester a few days yesterday, actually. The response has been expected in some quarters and unexpected in other quarters, but I want to touch on a few things here. David Lammy, for example, got a pretty frosty response at a vigil that he attended, but we'll get to that in just a moment. The Home Secretary has said pro-Palestinian protests last night were fundamentally un-British, says Minister. Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood has said pro-Palestinian marches that took place last night were fundamentally un-British. Asked whether she was comfortable with the protests, the minister said, "I was very disappointed to see those protests go ahead last night. I think that behaviour is fundamentally un-British. I think it is. I think it's dishonourable. I would have wanted those individuals to take a step back." Now, so there are a number of ways of looking at this. Was it right? Would it have been right for the people who are protesting against Israel, protesting against what's happening in Gaza, for them to stop? Well, I don't think so. Maybe I'm going out on a limb here, and I understand why people would be calling for them not to protest. But the protest, there are people who of course take part in the protest who are anti-Semitic. Okay, let's be frank about that. But the vast majority of people who are protesting are not. They're protesting what's happening in Gaza. They're protesting against the Israeli government. So to call on the people to stop protesting out of respect for the victims, I think this was an attack on British citizens. This was an attack on not Israelis, but on Jewish British citizens. So it should be a British issue, not an Israeli issue. These were not Israeli representatives of the Israeli government. They were not diplomats. These were ordinary people. So I don't think it's right for the Home Secretary. I understand why some people would say that, but I don't think it was right for the Home Secretary to call for people not to protest, because this protest is not about Jewish people. It's about the Israeli government. They're two separate issues. They do not separate the two. Max, go watch the interview. Stop arguing reform talking points. How did I argue reform talking points? Thanks, Max from Manchester. I'm trying to view this from two different points of view. I understand why some people will say, look, the protest should not have taken place because it was the optics of it, or the feeling was wrong. It was not correct to carry out this protest. But this protest has been going on for a long time. If they were to suspend the protest, then they would be automatically associating Israel with what happened to the individuals yesterday. And there should be no connection. Maybe the individual who carried out the attack sees a connection, but there should be no connection. So I understand why politicians will ask people to take a step back and postpone their protest. But once again, the protest is against the IDF. It's against what's happening in Gaza. It's not a protest directed at Jewish people, because Jewish people are already taking part in the protest. Zach Polanski is Jewish and he supports the people protesting. So to associate all Jewish people with Israel is actually anti-Semitic. So I think asking people not to protest, I understand both sides of this. I understand that people feel hurt that the idea that a protest is going ahead. And at the same time, I understand people want to protest. They want to exercise their right to protest, because their protest, the vast majority of people, there is a very small minority who are anti-Semitic, but the vast majority of people protesting are directing their anger at Netanyahu and his government, not at the Jewish people, and not even to the people of Israel. It's directed at the Israeli government. So I don't think it was right for the Home Secretary to call for people to postpone their protest. Move on to the next story, Matt. No, I can't, because this is really important. Now, David Lammy was at a vigil, and he got a pretty bad response from that. Have a listen.
Please. We know how we all feel. We know how we all feel.
Go to Palestine! Shame on you! Shame on you! Go to Palestine! Leave us alone!
As we've said, the vigil in Manchester is being held near the Heaton Park Synagogue in memory of attack victims. Let's just head over to that vigil and pick up a little bit.
No longer can people claim to be anti-Zionist and yet not Jew haters. We can no longer appease the extremists in this country, especially those of the far left and radical Islamists.
And the far right. Obviously, I hope you're going to include the far right in this, because the far right have a long history of attacking the Jewish community.
We have to stop the Palestinian marches being a glorification of the death of Jews.
Once again, the Palestinian marches are not a glorification. They are directing their anger at the Israeli government. Now, as I said before, are there individuals who are involved who may be anti-Semitic? Yes, surely. In every protest, there are going to be fringe elements. But you can't tar everyone on the protest as anti-Semitic, because then you're also tarring Jewish people who are protesting as well as anti-Semitic.
As it was yesterday, unbelievable, on the day of those two deaths. Now, half of the marchers are certainly marching for humanitarian reasons, but half are not.
I don't know how you come up with half. You'd need to actually present evidence that there are half of the marchers. And I think this is very dishonest, I'm sorry to say.
And we need to focus on the half that are not. We have to ban the phrase, globalise the Intifada. We have to tackle those people who are teaching and spreading hatred in places of worship.
This I agree with. If there are people engaging in hate speech, those people need to be challenged and those people need to be arrested and put behind bars. There's a limit to freedom of expression. It does not include incitement. It does not include hate speech. So anyone who's engaging in hate speech on whatever spectrum of the political divide, they need to be arrested. They need to be thrown in jail. I completely agree with this.
We have to tackle the university campuses and the NHS, where Jewish students and workers and patients are made to feel vulnerable by there being a proliferation of pro-Palestinian badges.
Okay, how the hell do you feel uncomfortable with a pro-Palestinian badge? Like, this guy is trying to grasp at straws here. How can a badge be offensive? How can a badge be intimidating? And once again, these are pro-Palestinian. This is not Hamas. These are pro-Palestinian. What you're trying to do is you're trying to suggest that everyone who's pro-Palestinian is pro-Hamas. No. For example, look at the West Bank. The West Bank is run by the Palestinian Authority. They are the opposite of Hamas. They are completely opposed to Hamas. They're a secular organization, but they're pro-Palestinian. So how do you square that circle? I'm sorry, this guy is extremely dishonest. I honestly don't know who this guy is, but he's extremely dishonest.
We have to root out the evil ideology, but not with hatred. Not hatred from our side. Words matter.
They certainly do. And the words that you have been uttering over the last few moments matter as well. So you should actually have reviewed what your speech was, what was contained in your speech, and thought about what you were going to say.
Words lead to hate, and hate leads to the tragedy we endured yesterday. We cannot continue to allow a war being waged over 2,500 miles away to bleed onto our streets. We look to our politicians to make diversity beautiful by insisting on real integration, where communities contribute to the overall good of the country and don't continue to look inwardly, staying rooted within their own narrow worlds.
And this I agree with as well. There is an issue of integration. How are people integrating properly? But also on the other side, are the communities outside that are welcoming or supposed to be welcoming the refugees and asylum seekers and foreigners, are they helping them integrate? I keep saying integration is a two-way street. People coming into a country, into a community, they need to integrate, but the community also has to facilitate that integration.
We are proud British Mancunian Jews who have contributed to this country for over 150 years. We love Manchester, and we love this country, and we proudly wave the Union Jack. Are those who are against us also proud of being British? Which flag do they wave?
And I have said before, the people at the pro-Palestinian marches should also carry the Union flag. They should also carry the flag of St. George. I keep saying the people at the anti-racist protests should carry the Union flag and the flag of St. George, the Scottish flag, the Welsh flag, whatever flag. Don't allow the far right to dictate which flag you're supposed to carry.
This is our challenge to our political leaders who are here on the stage with us today. So therefore, I have great pleasure in introducing our Deputy Prime Minister, David Lammy. And before I do, please, we know how we all feel. We know how we all feel.
Go to Palestine! Shame on you! Shame on you! Go to Palestine! Leave us alone!
They've allowed it to grow on a country. The children's school was closed today. You have allowed this to happen.
You have blood on your hands!
You're all guilty of it all. You have allowed Jewish in Manchester on the street. You have allowed it. You are all guilty. We do not want you speaking here today. You do not speak here. Do not speak.
That's a tough crowd for David Lammy.
We do not want you speaking. Shame on you. Shame on you.
Shame on you! Shame on you!
Shame on you.
Enough!
Empty words.
Okay, all right, we've heard enough. We know how you feel. I know how I feel. Let's give the time for our Deputy Prime Minister to address us. David Lammy.
Friends, we must stand together today. We must stand in grief, in solidarity and in defiance. Grief for the innocent lives that were taken so cruelly, senseless murders carried out on Yom Kippur, the holiest day in the Jewish year. Grief that causes so much pain and so much suffering. Today, our hearts, our thoughts, our prayers must be with the families and those who were killed. and of course with this community, this Jewish community, both here in Manchester and at Heaton Park Synagogue. Right across our nation, and as the Member of Parliament for Tottenham, I know the suffering in Crumpsall is the same as the pain, the worry and the frightened faces in my own constituency and in the area of Stamford Hill, one of the historic homes of the Jewish community in this country. In that sense, London and Manchester are twin communities, grieving as one, and the whole nation is with them.
Okay, I'll stop it there because we can get a sort of gist of what the speech is about. I just want to read some of your comments, guys, because you guys make the stream. I just want to see what you have to say about that. My dad talked with me today, and he's 80. I have an 19-year-old daughter. I'm worried about the future. Dad said, keep on and don't let the bastards grind you down. Wonderful advice. There's always a darkness before the dawn. I think we're in a sort of dark period at the moment when it comes to Donald Trump in the US, with what's happening around the world, and maybe with Nigel Farage, although I hope that Nigel Farage will not become Prime Minister. There's still a chance that things can be turned around, so there is some brightness before that particular darkness, or after that particular darkness. I'm not into flags, don't know why. I agree, Suzanne, I don't have any flags. If I do put up some flags, it's just for the channel, but it's not because I'm what they describe as a flag shagger. When it comes to patriotism, I think real patriotism is making sure that the most vulnerable people in society are looked after, that the nation looks after everyone. That's true patriotism in my eyes. You improve the situation for everyone, not just the elite. This bloke is spewing propaganda. Does he not acknowledge Jews are on the protest too? Yes, well said, Killer. That was in regards to the previous speech. Walk past this vigil today. At least they admit Palestine exists. So the crowd went lanky to go to Palestine to be shot. Lammy to go to Palestine to be shot by the IDF. Sounds like that's what they're suggesting. I think it's more like, we don't want you here, you should just go to Palestine. You keep talking about Palestine, so you should go there. I think that's the impression I get from it. If I was there, I would turn my back on him. He's reading from his phone. I think that's in relation to the previous guy. I have friends with darker skin, born here, and they're afraid to go out. I think a lot of people are afraid because of what's happening with the Tommy Robinsons of this world, with the Nigel Farages of this world. Max, this is the edge of the abyss, and we're falling in. I hope not. I hope that's not the case, Bill. I think there's still a chance that we pull ourselves back from that. Yeah. When I say that it's not, I mentioned before in this that not everyone at the march is pro-Hamas, and there are actually Jewish people at the march as well. For example, somebody who's supportive of the march is, of course, Zach Polansky, and he was asked about this.
Get more reaction to the attack in Manchester now from the Green Party, which opens its autumn conference in Bournemouth this weekend. That's its first since party leader Zach Polansky was elected with an 84% mandate. He joins me now from Bournemouth. A very good morning to you. And I do want to start by getting your reaction to the attack on that Manchester synagogue. As I understand it, you grew up in the Jewish community in Manchester. So give us your reaction this morning.
Well, it's difficult to find any other reaction that's new other than saying this is a horrific attack. As you say, I'm a Jewish man who grew up. I went to a synagogue that was very close to this synagogue. I went to school close to this synagogue. So this is both personal for me and is political. I suppose my deep reflection on a day like this is the work that I'm proudest of as one of the 5 people in the last 100 years to be in a leadership position in British politics that is Jewish. is to say that I'm really proud of interfaith work, where I've come together with the Muslim community to say actually an attack on one of us is an attack on all of us. And that
I love this guy. I'm sorry. My bias is I love this guy. I think he's wonderful. Yeah, and great to see people from Turn Left come on the stream. Welcome aboard. I need to send some people from from this channel to Turn Left Media. Do check out Turn Left Media if you haven't already. They put out wonderful content all the time. But he's a breath of fresh air. I know that Zach Polanski has a lot of problems. He has a lot of baggage from the past. He done some weird stuff in the past, and he's constantly called out on that. But let's look at him in the present, and let's look at him in the future. And I think this is what we need. We need somebody who has some integrity. He's somebody who believes in what he's saying. I could be proven wrong in the future, but I'm grasping onto this bit of hope for this wonderful guy. I think he's a wonderful guy. I think he's going to be a good leader for the Green Party, and he says what he feels. Zach is the absolute G. I hope that G is a positive G. No Brad tonight. No, where is Brad on? I hope Brad is well. I hope Brad is okay. Brad is quite absent. I don't see any Brad. He doesn't have any baggage, Max. You need to watch the Pod Save the UK with him on. Full story on the hypnosis thing. Yeah, look, the hypnosis thing is really weird, okay? And I think he has apologized for it. But look, people make mistakes in the past. It's important that they own up for those mistakes. And look, is he going to engage in hypnosis again? I hope not. Okay. So look, when it comes to somebody like Nigel Farage, if Nigel Farage had come out and said, look, I'm sorry for all the lying and the hypocrisy and the charlatanism and all of this, then maybe we could give him a second chance. But he doesn't do that. He continues with it. He hasn't apologized. He hasn't turned over a new leaf. In the same way as, look, Keir Starmer has, in order to become leader of the Labour Party, he was flexible with the truth. But if somebody is trying to do something good after that, then I think they deserve the benefit of the doubt. The jury is still out on Keir Starmer, and I'm being extremely generous, I think. Maybe you think I'm being too generous there. Look, whenever if a politician comes out and says, look, I was wrong about something, or it was a mistake, and they have moved on, or they're trying to make amends, or they're trying to improve the situation, then I think we should give them the benefit of the doubt, or we should try and give them a second chance. I'm more interested in policies. I'm more interested in what they'll do than what they actually are saying. Because politicians say a lot and then they do nothing. But at least with Zach Polanski, yes, he has a really dodgy past. But what is he doing now? He's on the side of the people protesting, even though he's Jewish. He's on the side of the working class, when the Green Party in the past was considered a middle class, eco-warrior sort of political movement. And now it's talking about a wealth tax. It's talking about the cost of living. It's talking about issues that affect the working class, ordinary people. Of course, the environment is extremely important to the Green Party. Look, I don't want to sound like a sycophant, and please do call me out if I'm starting to sound like a sycophant, because I don't want to. My whole thing has to be about policies. So are the policies good for people? And I think what the Green Party are pushing is good for ordinary people. There may be issues when it comes to house building. Are they blocking house building? Is there a justification for this blocking of house building? These are questions that have to be asked. But I think as a leader of a party, he's one of the best we have so far.
Actually, the only authentic response is solidarity. We need community cohesion, and we need people to stick together.
Have you been able to speak to anybody there? Give us an idea on what impact this will have had on the community in Manchester and the impact on Jewish people across the country.
Well, it's awful. We know for a long time that anti-Semitism has been on the rise. Again, I experienced that personally on social media, but we also know that there's members of the Orthodox community, both in Manchester and in London, who have had both verbal and physical attacks. I think it's about ultimately, though, I think your last contributor in the last package was really right. This can't just be about more security. We can't just spend more money on weapons or people or build bigger walls. We ultimately need to have a conversation in this country about what does community cohesion look like. We know that the best work is when communities are invested in, when people eat together, they can pray together, they can gather together. And I think decades of both Conservative austerity and now Labour austerity is really causing some of these divisions in society. And actually, this is a moment to step back and look at how can the government, how can anyone in civil society play their part right now in unity rather than division.
I think this is really interesting, this point that he raised here about austerity. And I've talked about it before. If there are fewer services for young people, they have nothing to do. And we know the old saying, the devil makes work for idle hands. So if young people have nothing to do, they're going to get involved in gangs. They're going to get involved in crime. It's not because they're bad people. It's because they have nothing to fill their time with. You know, they can either sit at home and play video games, or they can go out and hang out with their friends. And while in the past, hanging out with your friends meant going to the local community centre, playing table tennis or playing volleyball or doing some sort of sport or doing something together, those services no longer exist, and you're starting to see young people getting involved in crime. You see a rise in knife crime, for example. A lot of young people are carrying knives because they fear that they're going to be attacked and they have to defend themselves, or they have to carry a knife to be part of a gang. And being part of a gang provides you some sort of security or some sort of status. So why is this happened? Because of issues like austerity, where councils are no longer able to provide services for the community, including young people. So this needs to be looked at. It's not just about young people carrying knives, then they're bad, and we need to have more policing and more security. This is not the solution. We have to look at why these things are happening. What's the core issue here? And Zach is right when he points to austerity as being one of them.
Kemi Badenoch has linked some of the language around the war in Gaza. She says phrases like global intifada with creating a hostile atmosphere for Jewish people. The Greens have been outspoken in their support of Palestinians, but do you share those concerns about language?
No, I think Kemi Badenoch's been deeply irresponsible there. We need to not conflate the Jewish community and the ongoing genocide in Gaza, and actually putting those two things together, I say personally as a Jewish person, makes me feel more at risk. I think you can both be absolutely clear that anti-Semitism and Islamophobia in our country is totally unacceptable, and you can stand against the ongoing genocide and our government's complicity, in fact, active enabling by selling arms to Israel. Those are two different issues, but we can hold them.
What he's saying here is very uncomfortable for a lot of people, because as a Jewish man, he's saying, look, you know, what we're doing when it comes to Israel is wrong. We're supplying them weapons. We're supporting them. We're supporting what many people view, including the United Nations, as a genocide. So we're supporting that. We need to stop that. We need to stop that support. And, you know, it's very uncomfortable. Like, it's one thing if it's somebody who's not Jewish pointing this out, and somebody who is Jewish, and the leader of a political party. She said Northern Ireland voted out in the Brexit referendum. I presume that's in relation to Kemi Badenoch. Yes, I did a video on that. It was quite hilarious. For anyone who doesn't know, Kemi Badenoch thought that Northern Ireland voted leave in the Brexit referendum, and then she actually said, the last time I checked, Northern Ireland had voted to leave the European Union. So who did she check with? Liz Truss? She got her information from Liz Truss. And then the reporter on the BBC said, actually, no, Northern Ireland voted to remain. And then she realised and said, well, yeah, of course, Northern Ireland voted to remain. Like, she didn't say, oh, okay, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. No, she doesn't do gaffes. She doesn't apologise for her mistakes. Anyway, that's a side issue. Okay, let's move on to some other stories tonight, because I don't want that to dominate everything. But this is an interesting one here. Was it wrong for Keir Starmer to call Nigel Farage's immigration policy racist? So this is what Harriet Harman had to say.
I don't think that he'd planned to say it was racist. I think he was asked a question and somehow answered it, and it came out. And I think that really that didn't work. And I've campaigned against racism and in anti-racist movements all my life, but I've never actually labelled a party leader or an opposition MP racist, because any more than you would on the doorstep with somebody, if you're trying to persuade them to vote for your party, you don't want to say to them, you are...
Sorry, does she think that somebody needs to convince Nigel Farage to vote for the Labour Party? It's a strange sort of way she's framing this. Kevin Ladd, thank you so much for that super chat. Kemi is gaff free. Days since last gaff, 0. I like your creative bookkeeping there, Kevin Ladd.
Implicitly, by implication, a racist, because you're supporting a racist party. You need to persuade people of what is wrong with the policies and how they're divisive, and they make black and brown people feel terrified.
Yeah, no, look, I agree with her. There's no point just going, Nigel Farage is racist. Now, that will convince people not to vote for him. No, it doesn't work like that. We've already been down this road. Look, is Nigel Farage a racist? I think you could find some evidence for and some evidence against. But does it matter calling Nigel Farage a racist? Is it actually going to change anyone's mind? No, it's not. That's the problem. And the example I keep using is Donald frigging Trump, Agent Orange. He was labelled a racist. He was labelled a misogynist. He was labelled a sex pest. He was labelled a felon. He was labelled all sorts of things. A riot inducer or riot egger, egging on, or whatever what's the verb to egg on someone? Well, the continuous form of that verb, egging. Anyway, never mind. He egged on people. He was convincing them to protest, to riot, to attack members of the police force, and of course to try and assassinate the vice president at the time. So after all of that, people still voted for Donald Trump. So calling people racist is not going to work. You have to attack their policies. You have to expose the policy as unworkable. And of course, as I keep saying, the incumbent is the one who will decide the election. Come on, Max. His full title is Orange Ferret Wearing Shit Gibbon. Okay, sorry. I'll remember that next time. But evidence against where? Look, when I said is there evidence against Nigel, not so much evidence against, but see what Nigel Farage is very good at doing. This is why I sort of hold off from calling him maybe I've let it slip and called him a racist in the past, but we have to be very careful going forward about calling Nigel Farage a racist, because what he does is he says things and does things that are close to racism, but not exactly there. So, for example, he will say, "Look, I don't want all these Romanians coming in." But he was married to a German. Okay, so he's obviously picking Germans over Romanians. Now, if you discriminate against Romanians, is that racist? Well, it's prejudice against Romanians, but because Romanians are not a race, technically, then you can get away with doing that. And that's what Farage has been doing. Farage has not come out against specific races. When he talks about Islam, of course he's talking about people from the Middle East. But he doesn't say the people from the Middle East, he says Islam or Muslims. Because, somebody could be from Sweden. Somebody, a guy with blonde hair and blue eyes who converted to Islam. Is Nigel Farage against him? Yes, he is, because he's from a Muslim background. But he's not Middle Eastern. So Nigel Farage will, of course, be very careful how he uses his language. Now, there are people like Tommy Robinson and others who don't have two neurons to rub together, so they will not be careful with their language, and that's why in the case of Tommy Robinson, why he keeps ending up in jail all the time. But Farage is very clever. He knows which buttons to press, and he knows how to skirt as close as possible to actual racism without going over the line. Because he knows that if he goes over the line, then he's in serious trouble. So he will attack groups of people, but not identify them by race. And this is how he gets away with not. So if you call him a racist, then unfortunately you're going to have to present evidence that he is being absolutely racist. But unfortunately, there's nothing really there. There may be some evidence, but I haven't seen it. Because I'm not saying that he's not. I'm just saying that he's really good at avoiding this. You know, we saw it during the riots last year. Farage was not telling people, go out there and burn down accommodation for asylum seekers. Lucy Connolly was, and that's why she ended up in jail. Nigel Farage didn't end up in jail because he was asking questions. Remember, he wasn't saying you should do this or you should do that. He was saying, why are the police not telling us what the identity of the individual is? Why are the police withholding this information? See, you can do a lot of damage by just asking questions, because you're in a sense poisoning the well, or you're putting out these questions are, of course, in a sense sometimes rhetorical, and in other ways they're demanding that somebody respond, and you know the answer to the question you're asking. You're just putting out the question, hoping that people come to their own conclusions. It's extremely dishonest. The DUP do it all the time. You know, they throw the stone and then hide the hand. And the loyalist paramilitaries and the loyalist community, who I'm sorry to say, a lot of them are really thick, will go out and burn buses or attack the police or attack Catholic communities or whatever. But the DUP will say, oh, no, we didn't say to go out and protest. We didn't say to attack anyone. We're just asking questions. Or we're raising issues. Or we're raising concerns. So you have the two levels. You have the politicians like Farage and others who understand how to be careful with their language. And then you have the thugs who don't care or don't understand language. Garrett, thank you so much for that super chat. Nigel, up the Farage is so full of shit that if he took an M&M, he'd disappear off the face of the earth. I think it was somebody. I think it was what was it? Christopher Hitchens described. Was it some guy had died? It was a religious fundamentalist had died, and he said, if he had an enema before he had died, he could have been buried in a matchbox. On the day of his funeral, I think it was. Didn't have a huge amount of respect for that religious fundamentalist. But you're right. Thanks so much, Garrett. Tommy Lee Cadden, the bigoted woman being normal. Not sure what that's about. Simon Harris has said that the UK government has a lot to do with the EU food standards. If they want SPS agreement with the EU, check it out, Max. I will indeed. Thanks for that. I have no time for the DUP. Nobody should have any time for the DUP. The DUP have no time for ordinary people, so ordinary people should have no time for the DUP. Anyway, let's continue.
Terrified, and they're xenophobic. So I think in a way what happened is he made that without planning it. He said the racist thing, and then instead of just going back on it and just moving on, he slightly doubled down. And notably, no other cabinet ministers followed up. When it was put to them, is it racist? They didn't say, yes, it is, which is an acknowledgement that it's not the way the government is going.
And of course, what did Nigel Farage do when he was called out on this? Well, he said, This is incitement for violence against me. Okay. But Sammy's arse, Max, thank you so much. Thank you so much for that, Sir Larry. You know, I thought I'd be able to get at least a week out of avoiding Sammy Wilson's arse. You know, for 1 week at least. But no, of course, Sir Larry has to bring it up. Anyways, all this apologizing over him claiming a policy racist, not a person. Yes, and it's all about the policy. It's not about him. Exactly. Like the policy, we can argue whether it's racist or not. But of course, Farage is the eternal victim. Remember, you know, when he couldn't bank and he wasn't allowed to express himself and all of these things. Farage is a victim monger. He's always looking to be the victim. And of course, there was an opportunity. Somebody criticizes a policy. Oh, you're criticizing me. If you're calling a policy racist, that means you're calling me racist. And if you're calling me racist, then you're calling everyone who supports Reform UK racist. Look, when it comes to racist and Reform UK, not everyone who votes for Reform UK is a racist, but every racist is voting for Reform UK. That's the reality of the situation. Anyway, let's move on. So, some good news. Michelle Mone. Do you remember Michelle Mone? The one with the massive yacht. Says, Baroness Mone, I have no wish to rejoin the Lords as Conservative peer. So that means that she's giving up her salary? No, not salary. What was it? Allowance? So Baroness Michelle Mone has accused Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch of using reckless language that could prejudice a police investigation, and says she has no desire to return to the House of Lords as a Tory peer. Oh my goodness, isn't that terrible? A day after she wrote to Sir Keir Starmer accusing the government of pursuing a vendetta against her, the former Conservative peer responded to comments by Miss Badenoch following a High Court ruling that a company linked to Baroness Mone's husband must repay £122 million received for surgical gowns. I've said before, this Michelle Mone and perhaps her husband should be held criminally liable. You know, this could be a case of corporate manslaughter because they were providing gowns for the NHS, and it seems that these gowns were not fit for purpose. Now, can you imagine a different scenario? Imagine if the council needed somebody to, I don't know, work, there's a storm, a tree falls down in the road, and the council sends out somebody to cut up the tree and take away the tree so that the road can be passable. And can you imagine if somebody went out there wearing the protective gear, but the protective gear was faulty, the chainsaw hit them in the face and caused them a serious injury, and it did not provide the protection that it was supposed to do? Do you think that the council should be able to sue that individual, not just for the cost, but for the damage inflicted upon the individual? I think they should. Because if the equipment provided was not fit for purpose, it did not meet a particular standard. Now, if somebody was misusing it, that's a different thing. But if they were using it correctly and it was not fit for purpose, the person selling the equipment, if they already knew, well, it doesn't even have to be the case of, ignorance is not defense against the law, is not a defense in the law, or whatever the context is. Michelle Mone should, in this case, perhaps be held criminally liable. Corporate manslaughter, maybe cases could be brought against her and her husband, because I'm sure people suffered as a consequence of using dodgy PPE. The court found that PPE MedPro, founded by her husband Doug Barrowman, was in breach of a contract with the Department of Health and gave it 2 weeks to repay the sum. While not a director of the company, Baroness Mone used her political contacts to introduce PPE MedPro to the government's VIP fast lane as part of at the start of the pandemic, and a family trust of which her children are beneficiaries received £20 million of the profits. It's pure and utter corruption. A separate criminal investigation by the National Crime Agency is ongoing, and assets linked to the couple worth £75 million have been frozen while it continues. That's good news. These people are basically criminals. In a series of radio interviews, Miss Badenoch criticised Baroness Mone, accusing her of bringing shame on the Conservative Party. What is the shame on the Conservative Party? You got caught! Shame on you for getting caught. You know what you're not supposed to do? You're supposed to make lots of money. You're supposed to screw over the NHS. You're supposed to hand over dodgy PPE, but you're not supposed to get caught. That's the shame for the Conservative Party. See, what we did is we set up this VIP lane so that you could make a small donation to the Conservative Party and we would give you hundreds of £1 million in taxpayer money, but you're not supposed to get caught. What's wrong with you, Michelle? We set this thing up for you, and even after all of that, you got caught. So now you've embarrassed the Conservative Party. Shame on the Tories. Is that possible? I don't think. She claimed the verdict made then a target for violence. Does she even live in the UK? She can get on our yacht and go somewhere else. Shame, was that was the guy with the ferry company that had no ferries not shameful too? Yes, I remember that guy. Was it during the pandemic or it was during Brexit? I think the early days of Brexit. They were supposed to bring all this stuff in with ferries, and then there was like, okay, we need a ferry company. We'll give a contract to this guy who claims to have lots of ferries, and then we discover he doesn't have any ferries. But he got money. Oh, damn. Don't worry, it's only taxpayer money. It's not Conservative Party money. That's what I keep saying, like with the Rwanda. Remember, this has all been forgotten by so many people. And Kemi Badenoch wants to be leader of the country again. She wants to be Prime Minister. Guys, I'm getting blown by Amy tonight. I'm not sure how... Brad, thanks for that super chat, but you really should keep your WhatsApp messages off the live stream. Oh my goodness. Great to see you all. I was a bit worried about you there, Brad. Great to have you on. The failing grayling ferries, that the idea looked like on a beer mat. Look great on a beer mat, yes. Storm Alley, busier than Bonnie Blue today. Sorry, I forgot it was a storm. Sorry, I forgot about that, Brad. I was getting a bit worried there. Or I thought you were you were letting us know a bit too much. What the F? Who the F uses WhatsApp? I haven't in years. Oh, then I'm really behind the times. Anyway, guys, let's move on. So, are there crazy people outside the Conservative Party? Oh, yes, there are. And some of them were at, I think this is the anti-digital ID march or protest a couple of days ago. Have a listen to this.
I'll tell you what it is. It's in Revelation 13, and it talks about in the future. John was given a vision of the future. Not John the disciple, not John the Baptist, John the disciple, yeah? He was given God showed him what was going to happen in the future, right? And he said, no man can buy or sell unless he takes the mark in his right hand or upon the forehead. Now, this is...
Okay, so let me get this straight. I'm going to try my best here. So, God said to a guy called John, not John the Baptist, but John the disciple, that in the future, the Labour government would try and impose digital ID. No, he didn't actually say that. He said that there may be in the future a mark placed on people's foreheads or on their hands, and this is a sign of the devil or something. Like, how is it that these prophecies are never very precise? It's always something may happen in the future. Okay, and look, something has happened. You know, like this guy obviously believes that God created the universe, he created all of these things, and he made these predictions or these prophecies. Then surely God, if he saw into the future, which I assume he can, then surely he'd be able to say, look, in the year 2025, the Labour Party will be running the United Kingdom. He obviously knows this because he can predict the future. The Labour Party will be running the UK government, and it will implement digital ID. Now, people back in the Middle Ages and in the early times of Christianity didn't know what digital. Don't worry. Like, couldn't God have said to Peter, what was it, Peter? No, John. John. Look, this thing called digital ID, don't worry, you don't understand. It's not for you, okay? It's for the future. So just bear with me, okay? So there's a Labour government. Labour, what's Labour? No, it doesn't matter about Labour, okay? Just write these things down as I say them, okay? So the Labour Party, what's a party? Never mind what a party is, okay? Labour Party in the United Kingdom. What kingdom? Are there kingdom? No, it's not this kingdom. It's not the kingdom in the Middle East. It's in England. England. Where the hell is England? Never mind about that. Just bear with me. Bear with me, John. So, in England, in the year 2025, wow, 2025, yeah, never mind. 2025, a guy called Keir Starmer, I'll give you the spelling, he will try and implement a thing called digital ID, and people will have it on their telephone. What the hell is a telephone? Doesn't matter, John, just bear with me. It'll be on their, on their telephone, and they will be controlled, and this will be a sign of the devil. The devil. Yeah, it'll be a sign of the devil. Why don't you just stop it? Just write the frigging thing down, okay? So that people in the future will be able to do interviews for Politics Joe and come across as completely normal people, okay? So that other completely normal people will be able to understand that this is a sign of the devil, and they will not partake in this digital ID.
This isn't the mark, but it's laying the foundations for it. They want everything cashless. They want everything digital. Everything you do, everything you buy, everything. It's got to go through them. If you're not complying, then
how do these people tie their shoelaces?
You're against the system, and you'll be beheaded for it. This is what the
dude. Don't come to me about beheadings, okay? I'm the expert on beheadings.
Bible's teaching. Now people are starting to comply with what's happening. People are just walking around shopping. Of just like town is no difference.
Isn't it terrible? You know, people are not understanding that this is the end of the world. That the government are imposing a digital ID like they're happening in other countries. But now it's the end of the world because it's happening. Like, were the people who were, you know, when digital ID was being imposed in other countries, or ID cards being imposed in other countries, was that not the sign of the devil as well? Or was it just a UK specific thing? Like, wonder what Jesus' occupation was on his carpenter. He was a carpenter, of course. Was he an apprentice, or was he a fully, you know, qualified carpenter? Was he certified? I don't know. Gareth, thanks so much for that super chat as well. Mone, you old daft Tory crony. You want to defund the state? Set up a wee PLC. Thanks for that, Gareth. I'm sorry I didn't sing it correctly. Thanks, Garrett, as well for that. Of course, his job was carpenter. I thought everyone knew that Jesus was a carpenter. Don't hear many stories about him making stuff. And it was a little bit ironic that he was crucified on a wooden cross, I think. Did he know that was going to happen? Anyway, Jacob Rees-Mogg's candlestick phone isn't ID compatible. Candlestick phone. Thanks, Brad, and thanks, Gareth. Candlestick phone. I want a candlestick phone. I think everyone deserves a candlestick phone. A Victorian candlestick phone.
So what, every other day? It's like nothing's happening.
Do you think the Bible foresaw Keir Starmer in digital ID?
Please don't answer that question. Oh my goodness, they walk amongst us. They walk amongst us. One final story before we finish for tonight, guys, because apologies once again, I started a little bit late, but I want to cover as many stories as I can. Tory chair, minimize that. Okay. Tory chair accepted £2,000 in hospitality from developer of HMOs for asylum seekers. Exclusive Kevin Collinrake's conference cost paid for by firm helping landlords convert homes for lucrative market. When? Why? Why would you make a donation to the Conservative Party in 2025? Like, I understand corruption and all of this. Anyway, it says the Conservative Party chair, Kevin Collinrake, accepted thousands of pounds worth of hospitality from a company that converts family homes into homes for multiple occupancy, HMOs, for asylum seekers, official records show. According to the MP's Register of Interests, Living Redefined covered £2,000 worth of flights, hotel accommodation and dinners for Hollenrich and a family member to attend a property conference in the south of France earlier this year. I love how Brexiteers love travelling outside the UK to the EU so often. The entry, registered in April 2025, lists the hospitality as support for attendance at a conference. The company, honestly, like, what the hell is wrong with this company? You're making a donation to the Conservative Party. Do you not understand how corruption works? It's like you're supposed to corrupt the party that is in power or the party that is about to enter power. Sorry, the Conservatives are nowhere near power. The Conservatives are nowhere near getting into power. Unless this property company knows something that I don't. Like, what is wrong with these companies? You're supposed to corrupt an MP who's in power. What influence does Kevin Hollenrich have? Boycott that business. Rumor that Jesus' last words were, I can see my ass from here. It can't be possible because he was crucified in Jerusalem, not in Bethlehem. Or did he grow up in Bethlehem? There's a lot of missing information from the Bible. Like, what did Jesus do on a normal day? Did he have a job? Or did he just get stuff from God? Like, he say oh, I'm hungry. God, give us. Well, he is God, so he would never be hungry. Yeah, there we go. And he was able to turn water into wine. So can you imagine that as a parlor trick? Why isn't Jesus more famous? Especially during the time when he was wandering around. I know he was meeting with people and curing the sick and all of that stuff, but surely somebody who can turn water into wine, can you imagine how many people you could convert? Something about loaves and fishes. But was it also for his family? Did he for his parents? I think his parents. And isn't something I never understood about all of this. I'm going off on a complete tangent. But did Joseph know that, for example, imagine you're Joseph, okay, and you come home and your wife says, hey, I was visited by an angel. You're what? I was visited by an angel. I'm going to conceive. I conceived the Holy Spirit and I'm going to have God's baby or something like that. In the Bible or in the story, it's Joseph is wow, that's amazing, that's wonderful. Really, would that be your natural reaction if your partner said, "Yeah, I'm going to have a baby. It's not yours. It's a God baby." Wow, would that be your response, or would you be like, "I don't believe you"? Is Joseph the most gullible person in all of history? I don't know. I'm not saying it didn't happen. Obviously, I don't believe it happened, but I'm not saying it didn't happen. But surely, what would convince you, if you were Joseph, what would have convinced you that was actually true? Did you go, okay, well, I'll go along with it until this guy can do some miracles, and then I'll be like, okay, then I was right. What if they didn't do any miracles? And you're like, wait a minute, I was conned back all those 33 years ago. Anyway, on the Skyser Bible Basher, he reminds me of those Americans who say that God-given rights need to be protected with guns. Yes. Our American friend, no offense to our American friends, but some of our American friends are a bit wacky, aren't they? God-given rights. Isn't it interesting that the God-given rights never include making sure that people don't go hungry, or that they have a roof over their head, or that they have enough to cover the costs of living? These are never God-given rights. A God-given right is you should be allowed to own an assault rifle. They're not actually called assault rifles. They're like a defense rifle, because you use it to defend yourself. It's not to, it's always about defense. There was an Australian comedian who was like, how come if it's about security and defending yourself, you never see magazines about, home security, or you never see a guy standing above an alarm system going, hey, isn't this so cool? That was wonderful. How did Joseph cope with the Immaculate Conception? I don't know. And that's a question that never gets answered. the psychology of the whole thing. Once again, like, you know, Joseph was, you know, taking on somebody else's kid. But at least if it's somebody else's kid, you know it's somebody else's kid. But, you know, like it's somebody else's kid. It's God. Okay, just tell me it's the guy down the street. Okay, you don't have to say it's God. I believe you. Look, we'll work this out. No, it's God. God gave me this child. Okay, you don't have to come up with the God argument. Something went wrong. Okay, I lost you for a moment. Maybe the wrath of God is attacking my internet. Kay Bridges did a great sketch on Jos's reaction. I want to check that out. Thanks so much, Gareth, for that. Or protect school children, Maxi. Exactly. Why can't he protect school children? Wouldn't that be a God-given right to be able to go to school and not get shot? I think God's right. I better end here, otherwise God is going to shut down my internet. So guys, we're almost at the end of the stream, so I want to say thank you so much to everyone who came on tonight. Thank you to the moderators for doing a wonderful job, and thanks to everyone who sent a super chat. Greatly appreciated. There won't be a post-stream chat tonight, unfortunately, but I will see you all next Tuesday, same bad time, same bad channel. But before we go, we have this one for the road, so I hope you enjoy it. I think it's quite good. Audio.
Of Without You by Mariah Carey and Harry Nilsson and others.
You put your left arm in, you put your left arm out, in out, shake it all about. You do the hokey cokey and you turn around. That's what it's all about. You put your right arm in, you put your right arm out, in out, shake it all about. You do the hokey cokey and you turn around. That's what it's all about. Oh, the hokey cokey. Hokey cokey.
Amazing. So guys, have a great weekend. I'll see you on Tuesday, same bad time, same bad channel. Stay safe, take care, and good night.